Um, and Taylor is our staff, and also Angela. She is our social media slash refreshment slash anything we need her to do slash person. And we just really appreciate her too. We also have some volunteers that come down on a weekly basis and work with us. And there's Heather Agee that comes down, and I know she's out with back surgery. And there's Lori Hutchinson. Beverly Drake comes down. And I hope I haven't forgot anybody. If I have, somebody shout it out to me real quick. But anyway, that's who works with our children's ministry down there. And they do just such an awesome job. And they make what I do so easy. And so I really appreciate that. But for just a few minutes, when we're down in children's church, we try to keep our sermons down to a short while because of our children's attention span. And since we're doing everything like we do down there, I'm going to try to do the same thing. And I know y'all say, yeah, I've heard that before. But anyway, I want to ask you a question this morning. It sounds like a crazy question, and this is more of a testimony than it is a sermon, but here it is. I want to ask you this. What is your 4 inches? Now that might sound like a crazy question, but I'm going to clarify it for you. And as our scripture said this morning, was very, very important in this, was Philippians 4:13. We teach it down there as the 10-finger prayer, because it's 10 words. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And you know, as you look at that scripture, I'm reminded that it says that we can do anything through Christ. And I'm reminded back when Jesus was with his disciples, and his disciples were amazed by the things that Jesus was doing. And Jesus looked at them and said, you know, to paraphrase it, Jesus said, hey, you think this is something? You guys are going to do greater things than what I'm doing. You know, and I'm thinking about it, if we can do all things through Christ, what stops us from doing anything that we need to do? Here's why I want to tell you this morning, and like I said, it's more of a testimony than it is a sermon, but here's the thing. When I went in the hospital with my leg, with my foot at the time, and you know, the doctor come in and he told us that day, he said, look, he says, you know, we're either going to have to take this part of the leg, or eventually there's a good chance that we'll have to take the whole leg. And you know, I'm reminded of the scripture. You know, if your right hand offends thee, you know, or would keep you out of heaven, then cut it off. And it reminded me of that. It was like, okay, you know, either I can lose part of my leg or I can lose all of my leg. So I decided for him to go ahead and do the surgery. But anyway, after the surgery, I had to go in rehab. And I was very determined. I'm a very determined person. I am a very independent person. My wife stays on me all the time because I can stand up, you know, to get something out of the cabinet, and she's like all 2 pieces, you know, like I'm gonna fall. But with that, when I started and went into rehab, the first day they got me there and they gave me a walker and they said, okay, we need you to walk. And I said, like, how are you gonna walk with one leg? Well, you're gonna hop. So I said, okay, no problem. So by the end of that day, I started out and I was only able to walk about 10 feet. But by the end of that day, I was doing probably around 60 feet without stopping. You know, and I was very determined. Then the therapist was like, oh, now you can stop and rest. But here I was counting my steps. And I had a goal. And I was going to make that goal. And sometimes my last steps were only just a couple of inches at a time, but I was going to make sure that I counted and I was going to get those 60 steps before I quit. So I was able to do that. And then getting from the wheelchair onto the exercise bed, I was able to do it just like that. And I'm like, hey, God's really helping me do this. This thing ain't so bad after all. They carried me into the bathroom. I don't know how many of you have ever been in the rehabilitation center over in Greenville, but in the gym down there, they have a whole house, they have a store, they have a car in there. I mean, any type of scenario they can handle in there. So I was able to get into the car, and this is all the first day. And the therapist is like, man, we just never had folks that, would do this, She said, most of the time we're having to prod them. And, I was kind of confident in myself. Well, the second day came, and they carried me down there, and, I was walking, I was doing that. And then, on the third day, man, I'm breezing through this thing. I said, man, there's nothing I can't. The third day, I walked a while, and then they carried me to this set of steps. Now, these steps were only 4 inches. They were not a regular 8-inch step, but they were a 4-inch step. There was 4 of them. There were rails up there. And they said, Mr. Rouse, what we need you to do is hold on to these rails and just hop right on up these steps. And I'm like, okay, that's no big deal. Until I got my foot at the edge of it, and I grabbed a hold of it, and they said, jump. And, of course, everybody knows white men can't jump, but, so, it was like this little 4-inch step. Man, I was terrified of it. I mean, literally terrified of this 4 inches. All I had to do was to lift myself up with my arms and kind of jump up on that one step, then I could jump up on the next, and I was terrified I couldn't do it. And they grabbed me, and, even though I got up these 4 steps, I'm going to be honest with you, those 2 therapists toted me up those steps. It was not me. And then they said, when I got to the top, it's like, okay, come down. And I'm like, okay, you already toted me up here. Aren't you going to help me get down? And it was like, no, you got to get on your own, So I was getting ready to come down, and I'm going to get here to the edge. Don't worry, Sylvia, I'm not going to fall. I'm going to block my break here. I was coming down these steps, and with my one leg, when I got on this step, I hopped down, and my foot teetered. And I went to panic. I went trying to put this left foot down, and there wasn't no foot there, and they were hollering, Mr. Rouse, don't put that left foot down. Don't put it down. And I was determined I was going to put this foot down because it was just a natural instinct to me. And all of a sudden, the guy that was behind me, he went down on one knee and just pulled me down that one knee. And after I gained my composure, I told him, I said, well, that's the first time I've sat on a man's leg since I was Santa Claus as a young age. But I was terrified of these steps, and I got down, and it was like, oh no, they said, no, we're not going to try you on this again. No, we're not going to try you on this again. And I was so disappointed because every single thing else they had asked me to do, man, I had done just like that. I was determined. And I got back in my room, and I started praying. And I said, God, why did I feel that? And the devil kept saying, you'll never be able to walk up those steps. And I kept praying, and God brought to my mind the scripture, Philippians 4:13. Very simple. I've known it for years. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. Well, now, I got thinking about that thing, and I said, but God, I can't hop up those steps. And God says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And every time I had one excuse after another. God, I don't have but one leg. God, I can't hop. I'm a white man. I can't jump. I can't do this. I can't do that. God would say, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And like I said, I started thinking, if Jesus told his disciples that, after watching him do all these things that, hey, you can do even greater things, then what is a 4-inch step? Why is it stopping me? And I went to the gym the next day and I looked at that thing on the fourth day. And I looked at that thing and it terrified me. Those steps, and I didn't say anything. And when I would walk, I'd have to walk right around those steps. And I'd come back around and I'd look at those steps. And I'm telling you, it terrified me. Because you know what? The devil kept saying, you can't do that. You're not able to do that. You're a cripple. You're not able to get up and walk. You're not able to do this. You're not able to do that. You only have one leg. And every time God would say, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Finally, on the last day, man, I prayed about that thing and I said, you know, if that scripture is true, then that 4-inch step should not stop me. The last day, I went in, and the way they do is they give you this old crummy wheelchair, you know, not these ones that I've got now, but an old crummy wheelchair that hardly rolls. And they tell you that you have to roll from your room down to the gym. It's like from the other end of the church back 3 times, it seems like. And, you know, you're already tired by the time you get down there with your arms, but that's what they're doing. They're building up your arms. And I got down there, and the therapist looked at me and she says, okay, Mr. Rouse, we're going to start out by walking. I said, no, we're not going to walk today. She looked at me, she says, what, are your arms sore? I said, well, they are, but no, we're not going to walk today. She said, well, let's jump up there on the bed and do the exercise. I said, no. She said, do you feel sick? You haven't refused to do anything since you've been here. This is your last day, or you just got lazy on me? I said, no. I said, roll into them steps. I said, today's the day. And she looked at me, she says, Mr. Rouse, we've already been through this. She says, it's okay. She says, we're just going to mark that off. I said, nope. I said, I've got a mountain to climb. I said, I've got a mountain to climb. I said, that will